Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks in this little beginner's course, and in this video I have my chain. There's still 21 chains, and I'm going to show you in this how we do a UK half treble, which in the USA is called a half double crochet. So there is a little bit of difference between the names between the US and the UK, so do be careful when you're watching videos on YouTube that you kind of figure out which terms they're using, because they are the same terms but they mean different stitches. I know it's confusing. So this is a half treble in the UK and a half double in the US, as I said, and it is possibly my favourite of all the plain stitches. And the reason for it is that when you crochet with this stitch, it becomes quite dense, so there's not lots of holes, but it's quite a tall stitch, so it grows quite quickly. And some of the stitches that are taller and where it will grow quite quickly, for me, have too many holes and are too long. But I really like this stitch. Now, for me, I will do one turning chain when it comes to a half treble or a half double. And that means that this is the loop on my hook, it doesn't count. This is my first chain, which is my turning chain, and I'm going to work in the next one along. And I'm going to yarn over before I insert my hook. I'm going to insert my hook into that chain, yarn over and pull up my loop. So I have 3 on my hook. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3, and that's the stitch. So I'm going to yarn over. This is the one that we've been into, and this is our next one. I'm going to insert my hook and I'm going to yarn over and pull up my loop. So again, there are 3 loops on the hook. Remember, if you want to tighten your tension, you just keep a tighter grip between these 2 fingers. Yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, that's the stitch. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to go into the next one. This is the one we've been into. You can see that this stitch is pulling that one up. So we're going into this one. I'm going to yarn over and pull up the loop. Yarn over and pull through all 3. Yarn over. There's the stitch we've been in. This is the one we're going into. Insert, yarn over, pull up the loop. There are 3 on the hook now. Yarn over, pull through all 3. So this is what it's looking like. And as you can see, it's slightly bigger stitch than the one we did before, which was the UK double or US single. So again, we're going to yarn over. This is the one that we've been in. This is the next one. Insert the hook, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. We're just going to do that in every one along, and you can easily see which is the next one, because this is the one we've been in and this is the one we're going into. Now the only time it will get confusing is if you kind of go into this part and you go in and you've got, I don't think I did go into this part. So you've gone into the lower loop. You've got 1 underneath, that's not there. 1 underneath, 2 loops above. That will get confusing as to where you belong. So I always make sure I just go through this top loop. Yarn over into that top loop. Yarn over, pull up my loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Now I'm going to grip hold of it because I've got a little tail to hold on to, and that will keep it nice and the tension nice. And you can see which one you're going into. We've already worked this one. We're going in here. Yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through all 3. Let's do a couple more and then I'll pause it and carry on. I'm going to yarn over. There's the one we've been into. There's the one we're going into next. Yarn over and pull up. Yarn over, pull through all 3. We'll do one more. That's the one we've been in. you can see your next stitch. Okay, so I don't send you to sleep and bore you to tears, I'm going to pause it there and I'll catch up with you when I have a couple left. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And as you can see from our last video where we went into a lot of detail about yarn hooks and tension and everything else, when we did our stitch, it curled a little. But this one being a larger stitch doesn't tend to do that. So we've got 2 more to do. And we're going to just do, see, this is the one we've been into, just like before. And we're going to do our second to last. Now we're on our final stitch. Now remember, this is the knot from our slip knot, which we went through on the first video, not stitch. So we're going in our last one. And we're going to pull all 3. There we are. Our nice row of stitches. Now we're going to turn our work. Just turn it round. And because we pull through once, we yarn over and pull through all of our stitches once, just like yesterday, or the day, whenever you've watched it, it might not have been yesterday. Just like the previous tutorial, I should say, where we had 2 loops on our hook and we yarned over and pulled through once. And with this one, we've got 3 on our hook and we're yarning over and pulling through once. I always have a little rule that if you pull through once, you do 1 turning chain. But I always cinch it down so it doesn't get in my way and I don't confuse it with a stitch. And the reason I do this is because it keeps your edge nice and straight and tight. Now, some people, they chain 2. They'll go into the second stitch. I don't like doing that. I like to go in my first stitch with all of these small stitches because it keeps the edge nice and neat. So we've cinched down that chain. It's ended off that row, but it's not going to get in the way. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to go into that very first stitch and you can see it there. You can see the little hole where we're going in. And again, just as before, we've got our 2 loops at the top. So we're going to go in there. And if I move the yarn out the way, there's our 2 loops that are already on the hook, our yarn over and our stitch. And there's the 2 from the V at the top of the stitches. You can always have a look at this and you can see where your next stitch is. Okay, so I'll show you again because that's going to confuse the issue. Yarn over, we go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop. So we've got our 3 on our hook, yarn over, pull through once. Yarn over, you can see where your next stitch is. We're in this one. We're going into there. And just to make sure, there's our 2 loops. We're going to yarn over and pull up, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that's exactly the same as we were doing on the chain row, but it's much easier to see it and it glides through a lot easier on a row of stitches underneath rather than the chain. The chain row is always the most tedious and the hardest one because you're going into chain. But this is what it looks like. We'll do a few more and then we'll stop and we'll have a look. We yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, pull up, yarn over and pull through all 3. You can see once I show you here why I like this stitch, because like I said, it's quite dense. There's not hundreds of big holes and it makes a nice kind of chunky-ish stitch. Incidentally, we're using Aran yarn, which is a 4 weight. I find it easier to show you with an Aran, but the principles are the same with the DK weight or a chunky weight. Just make sure you have the correct crochet hook. And this is, because I started, this was the first row, I considered this the right side and this the wrong side because my first row is the back stitches. you'll soon get used to seeing the front and the back of the stitches and knowing what they look like. Okay, so let's carry on and we'll get to the end of this row. And I'll show you once again how we turn. If I go too fast, because I have speeded up, then just pause it and catch up with me. I think I need to pull out some yarn. Hold on just a second. That yarn pulled out. I think I was standing on it. Okay, so we're nearly at the end actually. Let's carry on until we get to the end. Distracted by buzzing. I think I've got a wasp in the house. Okay, so that's our second to last. And you can see now we've got this end here. And it doesn't look the same, but there are two loops. If you go in to your stitch, you can find your two loops. Make sure you've got both loops on before you yarn over and pull through. That's the cat. So that's our last stitch. Now we're going to turn our work. Now it doesn't matter if you do your chain and cinch it down, then turn your work. It really doesn't matter. You can do either. Okay, so once again, we're now at the start and you can see that that is our chain that we've just kind of done and cinched down. If you didn't cinch it, this is why I think it can be confusing. Let's make a big loop. I'm going to chain one. Now I'm going to turn. It looks like there's a stitch there, and when you come back the other way, I find that is quite confusing. So I don't like to do that. I yarn over and cinch it down a little. There we go. So now you can see where your first stitch is, and I make sure that this loop on my hook is a little bit raised because otherwise it becomes hard to find the stitch. So yarn over, go into the first one, yarn over, pull up your loop, yarn over and pull through, and then we can carry on doing every stitch. Now you've got this kind of off to a flying start. I recommend you do several rows. Now as you can see, it does pull down, but it will right itself because there is your stitch, and it does create a nice straight edge when you do that. It doesn't always look like it, but as your work progresses, you'll see it's nice and tight. But I would recommend doing a fair few rows of this and getting used to what you're doing, getting used to doing your tension before you move on to something else, to get this one under your belt, so to speak, and get used to working this stitch in rows and where you've got to go and getting your tension right and all those things. When I was first learning, I did swatches of each stitch, quite big swatches, until I got it completely right. Okay, so we're getting near the end again. There's our second to last. I fell out of it. And here's our last stitch. You can see the two loops there. And we do our chain and cinch it down. Doesn't matter which way round you go. And there you go. Nice and neat. So keep going with that one until you feel you've done enough and you know what you're doing. And on the next one, I'll show you how to do a UK treble, which in the US is a double crochet. So this is where it gets confusing. We both have double crochets, but in the UK, a double crochet is that first little stitch, which they call a single crochet. And for us, their double crochet is a treble crochet. So that's why I said to you in the beginning, when you're watching tutorials, make sure you know what terms that those are using, or if you pick up a pattern, you need to know what terms it's written in. It usually should say on there. Okay, thank you for watching. and I'll see you on the next one.